If these three things happen for the Arizona Cardinals in 2022, they're going to win a boatload of games.
You are Locked On Cardinals, your daily Arizona Cardinals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey everybody, I'm Alex Clancy. I'm the host of Locked On Cardinals. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for making this your first listen each and every day. If this is your first time listening to Locked On Cardinals and myself, thank you. Maybe make tomorrow your second. If this is your third time this week listening to Locked On Cardinals, thank you. Maybe hang out with me tomorrow as well. Follow the podcast at Locked On AZ Cards. Follow me on Twitter at Clancy's Corner. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. Turn the notifications on. Like the video. I'm just trying to grow this thing, baby. And thanks for coming along for the ride. There are three big ifs going into the 2022 season for the Arizona Cardinals. There's a lot of ifs. The ceiling for this team could absolutely shatter if a handful of the ifs bounce the Cardinals' way. But the three biggest ifs are ones I'm going to discuss today. If these three things happen, the Arizona Cardinals are going to improve upon their finish last season. I'm just talking about win-loss and playoff win-loss as well. Number three, the third most important if for the Arizona Cardinals in 2022 is if Hollywood Brown becomes a bona fide wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 1A for this roster. And it's not necessarily just because he's going into the last inexpensive year of his contract. It's not just because DeAndre Hopkins is out for the first 6 weeks. It's not just because the offense sputtered down the stretch a bit when it needed to rise up and win games for the Cardinals. It's not just because of that. The if is because they traded a first-round pick for him, because they didn't, add a need elsewhere that they severely needed, whether it be offensive line, cornerback, edge rusher, whatever. If Hollywood Brown becomes a bona fide 1,000-yard receiver, 8 to 10 touchdowns, starting in 2022, the Cardinals are going to win a lot of games. And there's different layers to Hollywood Brown as a player. Coming from Baltimore, run first, play defense, smash mouth football organization. He had a lot of targets, but Mark Andrews was the number one, even though he's a tight end. He had some dropsies, and he also had some incredible moments. The first memory for most of us, if you followed Hollywood Brown at all, whether it be in an amateur sense or fantasy football or whatever it was, he balled the hell out week 1, 2 years ago or 3 years ago at this point in Miami when the Ravens put up like a 50 burger on the Dolphins, where players were calling their agents saying, get me out of here after like week 2 in Miami. That's what we saw initially. Like, oh, sweet mother, this dude is fast. And he's a very good football player. We've seen that. We've seen some not so great. We've seen some hobbled moments. We've seen some more peaks. We've seen some drops. We've seen a lot from Hollywood Brown as a young receiver. And you can use it under the guise that Lamar Jackson has a unique skill set just like Kyler Murray does. Kyler Murray is like 75% passing, 25% running. Lamar Jackson is closer to like the 65-35, and he's gotten better and better every year as a passer. But his rookie year, like, he shattered quarterback rushing records. The team shattered rushing records. So it's not the same. And Lamar Jackson didn't go to college with Hollywood Brown. Like, the offensive output that the Ravens put up is just different than what the Cardinals are set to do this year. So if Hollywood Brown can come into Kliff Kingsbury's system, one that he's, at least tangentially used to from when he was in college with Kyler Murray, and become a bona fide wide receiver 1 during the first 6 weeks with DeAndre Hopkins out, with the double teams, with the safety spy, with Kliff Kingsbury probably going to have to get creative with him to get him open in space. If he can get through those first 6 weeks, the rest of the year should be a breeze barring any sort of injury because DeAndre Hopkins comes back. Zach Ertz, James Conner, AJ Green, Rondale Moore. They've got an embarrassment of riches on the offensive side of the ball. But Hollywood Brown needs to be that 1A guy. You'd like to think, okay, well, Zach Ertz was kind of the safety blanket for Kyler. He put up good numbers. He put up historic numbers for a tight end for the Arizona Cardinals, even though he got traded here mid-season. AJ Green's taking a step back, but he's still there. He's still 6'4". He can still catch touchdown passes. Rondale Moore is probably going to do this. Like, a lot of these things are just expected from people because we saw them last year. Just like I equated to like you're chasing points in a fantasy football league where you sat, AJ Dillon in week 3 of the fantasy football, year last year. And he put up a 40-burger. He didn't. I'm just making something up. He had 3 touchdowns and 150 all-purpose yards and won the week if you had played him. And then you start him the next week and he puts up 6 total fantasy points. It's chasing points. There's no carryover. There's no momentum from year to year in the NFL. It's being prepared, being equipped talent-wise, and being able to execute a game plan. And that's what the Cardinals are set up to do as currently constructed, absolutely. But you can't rely on, well, this happened last year, or this is going to probably happen. You can think that way, and that's fine, and that's a positive way to think about it, for sure. And you should think that way. And also, maybe infuse in a little thought process like, Hollywood Brown needs to ball out. Like, there's no honeymoon phase here. The Cardinals are already married to Hollywood Brown because he's going to want a contract after this season. So they need to put him in a position to succeed. Kyler Murray and he need to show everybody that the rapport that they had 4 years ago and the bromance that they have, their best friends, will actually translate when it matters and not when you're playing in the Big 12 against guys who have to go to first period French on Monday. If all those things happen, the Cardinals are going to win a lot of games. And you'd like to think, and conventional wisdom would make you think, that that's going to happen in a better percentage than it not happening. Well, we're going to find out. Week 1, Kansas City at home. Raiders on the road week 2. Rams at home week 3. Hollywood Brown is going to be the focal point of every defensive coordinator and every defensive-minded head coach. Stop him. Cut the head off the snake. Make other people beat you. And if he can overcome that, that's going to show much more than what we've seen from him during his first couple years in the league. That's going to show, is he a wide receiver 1? If so, the Cardinals are going to win a boatload of games in 2022. Alex Clancy, Locked On Cardinals. Thanks for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen each and every day, free and available on all platforms. Thanks for hanging out. Coming up next, the second most important if going into 2022. If this thing happens, the Arizona Cardinals are going to win a boatload of games in this upcoming season. That's next, Locked On Cardinals. First, I get to talk to you about LinkedIn. Okay? As you gear up for fall, you need the right people on your team to hear your small business fire on all cylinders. You need help wherever you can get. LinkedIn Jobs is here to make it easier to find the people you want to talk to faster and for free. I was all over LinkedIn, okay? I believe that I've made 10 to 15 contacts in the industry over my time, over the last couple years, when I was looking for a job, when I was trying to better where I was at, things like that. LinkedIn is a fantastic marketplace, okay? You can create a free job post in minutes on LinkedIn Jobs to reach your network and beyond to the world's largest professional network of over 810 million people, okay? It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs number 1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Did you know every week nearly 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn? Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions, they apply. Thanks for hanging out. Alex Clancy, Locked On Cardinals. Follow me on Twitter, Clancy's Corner. Follow the podcast at Locked On AZ Cards. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. I will be doing a halftime show every game starting last Friday through Week 18 and hopefully through a deep playoff run for the Cardinals. Join me. Bring your popcorn. Bring your beer. Bring your seltzer. Whatever the hell you do, do it with me. Halftime of Arizona Cardinals games. I'll be there. Interact. hear your comments, answer some questions, hopefully talk positive things more than negative things throughout the 2022 NFL season. There are 3 ifs that, if executed, the Cardinals are going to win a boatload of games in 2022. Number 3, the third most important, Hollywood Brown needs to become a wide receiver 1. If Hollywood Brown becomes a wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 1A, the Arizona Cardinals are going to win a lot of games in 2022. The second most, and this should be tied for first, the second most important if going into 2022 for the Arizona Cardinals, if this young defense can all collectively take their respective steps forward, the Cardinals are going to win a lot of games in 2022. And I'm talking about everybody. Veterans, rookies, and everybody in between. If Marcus Golden can replicate his pass rush numbers from last year, if J.J. Watt can stay healthy and be J.J. Watt, if Isaiah Simmons takes his step forward into a fringe Pro Bowler this year, if Zaven Collins doesn't look lost like he did against Cincinnati in the first preseason game, if he's able to stay on the field and have meaningful snaps for 75 to 90% of the defensive snaps this season, the Cardinals are going to win a lot of games. If Marco Wilson can take his second step forward in his second season and stay healthy, if Byron Murphy can show his worth as a CB1 and not have a year like Christian Kirk did last year, which will allow the Cardinals to say, you know what, really happy for your service, thank you very much, but go make your money elsewhere because we ain't paying you. If he can take that step forward into a true bona fide CB1, the Cardinals are going to win a lot of games in 2022. If Budda Baker and Jalen Thompson can solidify themselves as a top 3 safety duo in the NFL, like they already seem to be, the Arizona Cardinals are going to win a lot of games in 2022. But the thing is, and Myjai Sanders and Cam Thomas, if they can take that rookie step where it's like, you know what, they're playing 50 to 60% of the snaps at times, meaningful snaps, getting behind the line of scrimmage, making quarterbacks' jobs more difficult. That's their addition to this big if on the second segment of Locked On Cardinals on a Thursday. But the thing is with this if, 80% of it's got to happen. It's not like Isaiah Simmons takes a step, Budda Baker and Jalen Thompson, they solidify themselves, but nothing else happens. Everything else is status quo from last year. It ain't going to work. The Cardinals are going to be a bottom 3 defense. If 60 or 70% of these things work, all the Cardinals need to do on the defensive side of the ball is be a top 15 defense. They don't have to be world beaters. It was obviously Steve Keim's path. His game plan this offseason was to completely overload the offense and ride with the young talent on defense. Let Jordan Phillips walk, okay? Let Kinsey Kiki walk, because Lecky Fulcher and Rashard Lawrence are going to be the duo on the interior of the defensive line. That's the decision that was made. A tandem of 4th-round picks from a couple years ago. One was theirs, one I believe was from Houston in the DeAndre Hopkins trade. And they've shown flashes. I'm not saying that they're not equipped. Zach Allen went healthy. He and J.J. Watt kind of play the same position. If they're both healthy, this defensive line is going to be a lot better than what it looks like on paper. We just need to see it. And the reason why this is the biggest if, even though it's the second, because the first one is kind of goes without saying, and you'll hear next segment. If this defense can't be a top 15 defense, we're going to have very uncomfortable conversations come the offseason. And I've already staked my thought in the ground months ago. I'm going to continue to say it. And I hope among all hopes that this doesn't happen. Okay. But it needs to be discussed. If this defense is the reason why the Cardinals don't win games, Vance Joseph will be the scapegoat. It's not fair. It won't be his fault, but it's what's going to happen, in my opinion, because the self-fulfilling prophecy that Steve Keim has set up for himself is Kliff Kingsbury contract extension. He got a contract extension. Michael Bidwell gave it to him. Kyler Murray got his contract extension. They traded for Hollywood Brown. They drafted Trey McBride. They said, you know what? Corner, edge rusher, don't need him in the first 2 rounds. We're doing it a different way. So it definitely can't be the blame on the offense. It's got to be the blame on the defense. If the offense is not the strength of the team in 2022, we've got massive issues. There are incredibly massive and very uncomfortable conversations that are going to be had throughout the season. And I don't think that's going to happen. But if it does, we're going to have a problem. if the defense is the reason why the Cardinals either don't make the playoffs or can't, beat anybody when they're putting up 28 points because the defense is giving up 30, Vance Joseph will be the scapegoat. He will be removed from his position, and it will be completely unfounded and completely unfair. But in the Cardinals' way, Steve Keim is protected, Kliff Kingsbury is protected, and hopefully this defense will emerge as a top 15 defense because if this defense, with the majority of young players, all take the next step, if 70 to 80% of them do, this defense will be top 15, and the Cardinals are going to win a boatload of games in 2022. You hope that the Cardinals will win because of the defense at times, like they did a lot last year. People look at the final score with the numbers, with the points on the board. Tennessee was won by the defense. Cleveland was won by the defense. Chicago was won by the defense. All of those 3 road games, the Cardinals put up a lot of points, not as many in Chicago, coming out of the bye week. But don't let the point total fool you to think that was on the shoulders of the offense. A lot of short fields provided by the defense in 2021. Let's see if they can replicate it in 2022. And again, if this defense can take their step forwards, respectively, with young players all the way through the veterans, 70 to 80%, this defense is going to be a top 15 defense, and the Cardinals are going to win a boatload of games in 2022. What is the most important if this happens? Then the Cardinals will win a lot of games in 2022. You may know what's coming, but I'll talk about it. Thanks again for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen every day. However you play, get the latest NFL fantasy draft tips from Locked On Fantasy Football and Locked On Dynasty. Plus, starting August 22nd, Monday, we're bringing you daily top 10 lists for Fantasy Draft Week, Locked On Fantasy Football and Locked On Dynasty, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. Kliff Kingsbury, the biggest if. I'm going to talk about it next. Alex Clancy, Locked On Cardinals, next. All right. You're hanging out with some friends and putting back a few drinks. A few becomes a few too many, and the evening comes to an end, and people start to head out. You think of calling for a ride. Nah, you live nearby. You can make it home. It's not a big deal, okay? What are the odds you'll ever get pulled over? And even so, what's the worst that could happen? Your insurance goes up. You lose your license. You lose your job. You total your car. You kill someone. It's a lot of things that could happen. Everyone knows about the risks of drunk driving, okay? The results are tragic and often deadly. However, that still doesn't stop everyone from getting behind the wheel while under the influence. That's why police officers are out there right now looking for impaired drivers on our roads to save lives, okay? So if you think you're okay to drive after a few drinks, just think again, all right? Play it safe, plan ahead, and get a ride. It only takes one mistake to change your life or somebody else's forever. Drive sober or get pulled over. The 3 biggest ifs going into the 2022 season for the Arizona Cardinals. Number 3, if Hollywood Brown becomes a bona fide wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 1A, the Arizona Cardinals will win a lot of games in 2022. Number 2, the second most important if going into 2022, if this defense can take the steps forward necessary, just one step in the growth from each respective player and each where they are in each of their NFL journeys years-wise. 70 to 80% of that happens, the Cardinals are going to win a lot of games in 2022, and this defense will be top 15. The biggest, number 1 if, as it pertains to win totals for the Arizona Cardinals in 2022 is, if Kliff Kingsbury can put together full game plans, cut down on penalties, and be a better timeout manager, the Cardinals are going to win a lot of games in 2022. And that sounds like kind of like a backhanded, well, he's done some of that. Sure. I say it all the time. He can put together a great movie trailer, an Oscar-worthy movie trailer. But sometimes the movie isn't so great. There's masterful moments from Kliff Kingsbury and then boneheaded moments like, how are you a head coach? And all head coaches have issues. They make mistakes. They're human beings. But Kliff Kingsbury tends to make mistakes at the most inopportune and most immature times. The times where it's like, how do you make that mistake? How do you call that set of plays when all you have to do is get 2 first downs, you run out the clock? I'm not the only one who looks at it like the Cardinals are up 2 points. They've got the ball. with a minute 38 and the defense, the opposing team has 3 timeouts. They need to get 2 first downs, and this game is a wrap. Victory formation, walk off the field victorious, and then the Cardinals go 3 and out in 26 seconds. Those things need to be alleviated in 2022. This is going into his 4th year as a head coach in the NFL. These are things that are imperative if you want to win. The Cardinals should have won 14 games last year, 15 games last year. That's not crazy. Look back at the calendar. They lost to Denver or Detroit. Okay? They lost to Indy with their whole defense hurt on Christmas at home. They lost to bad football teams last year. Kliff Kingsbury needs to be better. If Kliff Kingsbury can call full games, if Kliff Kingsbury can get this team motivated enough to lower the penalty count. And listen, an aside about penalties, yes, it's on the player. Of course it is. The top penalized teams are always the most undisciplined. It's been the Raiders forever. The Dallas Cowboys had 21 penalties in their first preseason game. That's the baseline. That's where the year starts. And I know it was 2s and 3s. It's discipline. It's strength of foundation of an organization. So it's the player's fault. I mean, yeah, kind of. It is. But also, that's preparation. That's the coach. If Kliff Kingsbury can put it together, the Cardinals are going to win. I mean, the Cardinals can win the Super Bowl if Kliff Kingsbury puts it together. Like, that's never been a question. The Cardinals 100% could have won the Super Bowl last year if they had a head coach who was equipped to do it down the stretch. And I'm sorry if that's harsh or that's wrong. Like, look at what happened. These are just facts. Kliff Kingsbury's never had a good second half of a season. Ever. 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 And I know Soul Pancakes, my boy, who continues to berate me about talking about Kyler Murray and saying that, it's Kyler Murray's fault and not Kliff's fault. Give me a defense for Kliff Kingsbury never closing the deal in 1 year that he's coached during the second half of the season, ever. Give me a defense for that. I'd love to have a conversation. If Kliff Kingsbury can put it together next year, the Cardinals could win the Super Bowl. That's just the truth. And damn it, I hope it happens. Alex Clancy, Locked On Cardinals. I'll talk to you tomorrow.